I'm not under any pressure whatsoever. We've never had so much ammunition. Our ships are loaded. I call them locked and loaded. They're locked and loaded. They're ready to go. We have much higher quality equipment than we did when we first started the war.
Hi again, everybody. It's 5 o'clock in New York. While Donald Trump and his administration tie themselves into knots, trying to diminish the impact of the war in Iran on the American people, on our military, on our relationship with our allies, an alarming picture is coming into focus. Contrary to Trump's claim there that America stands, quote unquote, locked and loaded, new reporting finds that the war in Iran has placed enormous strains on the United States munitions supply, a depletion which experts warn could take years to reverse, leaving America and our allies vulnerable to threats from abroad. The New York Times reports this, quote, since the Iran war began in late February, the U.S. has burned through around 1,100 of its long-range stealth cruise missiles built for a war with China, close to the total number remaining in the U.S. stockpile. The military has fired off more than 1,000 Tomahawk cruise missiles, roughly 10 times the number it currently buys each year. The Pentagon used more than 1,200 Patriot interceptor missiles in the war at more than $4 million a pop, and more than 1,000 precision strike and ATACMS, ground-based missiles, leaving inventories worrisomely low, according to internal Defense Department estimates and congressional officials. The Iran war has significantly drained much of the U.S. military's global supply of munitions and forced the Pentagon to rush bombs, missiles, and other hardware to the Mideast from commands in Asia and Europe. The drawdowns have left these regional commands less ready to confront potential adversaries like Russia and China. A drawdown that has left some of our closest allies vulnerable. The New York Times adds this reporting, quote, in Europe, the war has led to depletions in weapons systems critical for defending the eastern flank of NATO from Russian aggression. That's according to Pentagon information reviewed by the New York Times. The Wall Street Journal adds this reporting, quote, the U.S. has burned through so many munitions in Iran that some administration officials increasingly assess that America could not fully execute contingency plans to defend Taiwan from a Chinese invasion if it occurred in the near term, U.S. officials said. Wholly replacing those stockpiles could take up to 6 years, officials said. This threat to our military readiness from a conflict no one has been able to explain to the American people why we are fighting is where we begin the hour. Retired Army Major General Randy Manners back with us. He served as Deputy Commanding General in Kuwait and Acting Vice Chief of the National Guard Bureau. Also joining us, staff writer at The Atlantic and a contributor to The Atlantic daily newsletter, Tom Nichols. He is a professor emeritus of national security affairs at the U.S. Naval War College. And back with us, retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Amy McGrath is here. She is a candidate for the open Senate seat in Kentucky. General Manners, I start with you. This is something that I think people don't think would get to this point. I mean, I think this is the sort of thing that people like to leave to their government, like to trust their government with keeping in a range that is safe. And it seems that these stories suggest that people inside the military do not think we're in a safe range on these issues anymore.
I completely agree with the assessments by the New York Times and the other investigations that have been ongoing. This is something where we are probably in the lowest state of readiness, quite frankly, probably since 2010, 2012, in that time period. We have been, these stocks will take, I was saying, perhaps 2 years if they accelerate the funding and accelerate the assembly lines and so on, and make huge investments in our through our defense contractors. But the reality is we are dangerously low on these ammunitions. No matter what the president says, it is complete propaganda. And it also bothers me when he says our ships are fully stocked, locked, and loaded, whenever the U.S. mail is being rejected by the military since April 7th, and our men and women in uniform in the Middle East are not even getting mail for the past 3 weeks.
Why is that? Explain that.
The quote from that I have been able to find is, logistic necessities are prohibiting mail from being delivered. Well, that's crap, quite frankly. in wartime, the most important thing you can get is a package from home, whether it is cookies, whether it is toiletries that you can't get on board ship or you can't get locally. It's just that idea that it's a touch of home. My dad was in Vietnam, wrote to my mom every day, and my mom wrote to him as well. It kept him going. Even though we have email and the internet, the reality is getting a package from home is very important. And here the administration does not take into account the morale of our men and women that are in combat and has suspended all mail deliveries since April 7th. And it's even on the USPS website that they're all suspended.
Tom Nichols, let me come back to the reporting on our readiness and on the depletion and the draining of our supplies. Times adds this: the Pentagon has also moved sophisticated air defenses from Asia to bolster protection against Iran's drones and rockets. The redirected weapons include Patriot missiles and interceptors from South Korea, the only Asian ally hosting the advanced missile defense system deployed by the Pentagon to counter North Korea's growing missile threat. Now, for the first time, the system's interceptors are being moved away, according to American officials. I guess I'm old enough to remember the little Rocket Man chapter of Trump 1.0, and I know he went on to fall madly in love with Kim Jong-un and to write love letters and share those love letters. But that doesn't change the nature of the North Korean regime. And I wonder if you can just speak to our exposure and the fact that it is very public, how exposed the United States is in Korea, in Taiwan, and around the world.
I wish I could say something comforting, but I'm going to now say that it's worse than you think. Because the danger here is not just that we're drawing down stocks of weapons for a war that we didn't need to be fighting. I think one thing that Americans should ask themselves is when they hear these reports is to say, and for what? Because this was completely unnecessary. But more to the point, not only do our opponents know that we're draining our stocks, but they've had a good look at our wartime leadership. And they have seen us, our civilian leadership. They've seen the operational excellence of the U.S. military, but that only takes you so far when the civilian leadership is so utterly incompetent. And that worries me almost more than the drawdown in stocks, because I'm concerned that our allies think that they are facing the weakest and most disorganized and most incompetent American leadership in decades, maybe ever. We have an unstable president. I just want to emphasize something General Manner just said about propaganda. It's worse than propaganda when Donald Trump says we have all the weapons we need and they're the best. It's worse than that. He doesn't know. Donald Trump has no idea how many weapons we have, whether they're any good. He just says stuff like that when he's asked questions because he needs to say that everything's fine. The president of the United States does not know what he's doing. He's an unstable person, and the people he's relying on below him, starting with the Secretary of Defense, are incredibly incompetent. His negotiating team is his son-in-law and a real estate developer. The Secretary of State is somewhere, but apparently not deeply involved here in trying to resolve this situation. The Director of National Intelligence is virtually invisible at this point. No one seems to know what she's doing. And if I were a foreign opponent, I'd be looking at this and saying, this is, singularly the most incompetent American regime we've ever faced, and they're burning through their stocks. I suppose the only good thing to note here is that the Chinese and the Russians are probably intelligent enough not to interrupt Trump while he's doing this much damage to our national security and to our national defense. But when you take those numbers that you've been reading, Nicole, and you add to that this war is being directed by people who are, making a complete hash of it, we are putting ourselves in an incredibly dangerous situation.
Well, let me ask you, we are in, or we would like to be in a negotiation with Iran. Why would Iran negotiate with us if the current path is depleting and weakening us more than any negotiation could?
Well, the Iranians are clearly showing that they have a higher pain tolerance right now than we do, and I suspect that they have every incentive to drag their feet to drag this out. because that increases the economic damage that's going to reverberate throughout the American and Western economies. I mean, in a sense, Donald Trump is, while he's done an immense amount of damage militarily to the Iranians, he has not destroyed the regime. He has not destroyed all of their military capacity. And he's handed them the ability to choke off the strait and to affect our economy. So, the question is, why would the Iranians negotiate? Great question. I suppose the answer is they don't really have much of an incentive to, especially because all of Trump's body language seems to indicate that he doesn't want to restart this war, that he doesn't want to start major combat operations again, even though, again, he says it. He says that if they don't negotiate, he'll do terrible things. But I think you can only say that so many times before you're the boy who cried wolf. So, again, all in all, it's this war has left us far worse off than if we had never started it in the first place.